Over recent decades, the world has seen a variety of technological advancements, including the introduction of the internet, which has provided individuals access to emails and other forms of communication, such as instant messaging. Additionally, the introduction of smartphones has permitted on-the-go communication through text messaging and easy access to multiple applications and online platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. Thus, these advancements in technology has paved the way for a variety of occupational fields, including social work and human services, to provide distance therapy to their clients, which results in numerous benefits, including the elimination of typical barriers, which might otherwise prevent access to treatment services. These include client geographical location or lack of transportation. One population that is fully accepted and benefited from the use of distance therapy are adolescents. When utilizing distance therapy, a clinician is able to better understand the needs of the adolescent in a world that continues to evolve technologically. Therapists are able to use the client's online social life as a platform to better understand the client and their web of interpersonal and interconnected relationships. Furthermore, distance technology may promote the therapeutic alliance by allowing the client to stay connected with their support, including the clinician, thus resulting in better outcomes and successes. While distance therapy is a great way to promote adolescent involvement in therapy, additional ethical concerns may arise, which include appropriate state-to-state licensure, the client's full understanding of the informed consent and confidentiality processes, as well as the formation and maintenance of appropriate client-clinician boundaries. There are a variety of aspects to consider when deciding to provide this therapy, as well as this type of engagement in this therapeutic intervention.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the stakeholders who have been identified as adolescent clients, social workers, software and online platforms. It's important for social workers to be aware of the platform which their adolescent clients are living. Adolescent relationships are present not only in the outside world, but also online through community chat rooms, social media, and texting. Studies have shown that psychotherapists often encounter generational differences between themselves and their adolescent clients. And this suggests that by having therapists understand these differences, it may promote a therapeutic alliance. Some ways to promote this alliance is allowing adolescents to stay connected to their contacts and support systems during therapeutic session. For instance, text messaging. For allowing text messaging during therapeutic session, the clinician is able to use the client's online social life as a tool to help scaffold the adolescent to better understand their problems, which could be generated by their social life. This can also help the adolescent stay present in session, as it allows them to feel understood and again provides insight into the adolescent's life. It's essential for social workers as stakeholders to incorporate these practices as the adolescent population relies vastly on digital communication, reaching 20% of adolescents who send over 120 text messages a day. This figure alone represents the specific client system of young people and is representative of what they need from their mental health providers in terms of expectations of communication. Online phone therapy is another common way in which social workers can connect to their adolescent clients. Online therapy has received a variety of labels throughout the years, including online practice, e-counseling, web-based therapy, web-based counseling, email counseling, internet therapy, and therapy email. Social workers continue to be stakeholders in the development and use of this technology, as its growing practice requires one to be able to meet clients on numerous platforms of communication, as mentioned above. Electronic health is a growing industry which requires social workers to be informed and up to date. By staying updated with the NASW Code of Ethics and new online platforms, social workers are able to incorporate online therapy into their practice and widen the range of clients they serve. In addition, social workers who routinely use digital technology such as online therapy or video counseling raise ethical concerns which may be considered as stakeholders in the development of online therapy. Now, there are many different software devices and online platforms which aid in the delivery of distance and text therapy. Agencies and individual social workers are turning to providers such as Second Life, which is a new software program offering individual therapy where clinicians are able to hold private sessions. These providers are new stakeholders in the therapeutic world as they are developed and rely on social workers to gain clientele. Many newly developed software programs rely on the success of online therapy and web-based interventions. A couple more examples are Drinker's Checkup, which is a program which provides clients an online platform to help and monitor their understanding of their drinking problems. Personal Investigator is another website which is a new stakeholder in the success of online therapy, and it's designed for mental health professionals to utilize when working with adolescents. These software tools help adolescents work out their life stressors by plugging different people into an online game. I thought that was a nice example because it really does show how adolescents respond to technology these days. Lastly, mobile phone service providers are being used more frequently in the development of online, especially text and phone therapy. These service providers include Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, Sprint, and others. They have to continue to stay active while practitioners increasingly use text to text their clients as a way of relaying messages, providing appointment reminders, and aiding in times of client crisis. Lastly, since adolescents are some of the highest users of text messaging and the online world, it makes sense that phone providers, software providers, and clinicians would be interested in expanding services and entering into the therapeutic online realm.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about ethical concerns as it relates to distance therapy. There are several ethical concerns that social workers should really think about before they dive into either distance therapy and text therapy, email therapy, any kind of technological therapy. Some of the ethical concerns are appropriate licensure, informed consent, confidentiality, boundary management, text messaging, and crisis management. When utilizing technology in social work practice, it's essential that social workers refer to the NASW Code of Ethics and to be especially aware of the ethical concerns that could arise through that use of technology. The Code of Ethics provides practice standards and expectations for social workers, and it also reminds social workers that lack of face-to-face contact may increase the potential for maltreatment or abuse of vulnerable people. It's imperative that all social workers abide by the Code of Ethics, and it's really even more important for social workers engaging in online therapy to be aware of the potential pitfalls. We're talking about informed consent. All clinicians must obtain informed consent when conducting therapy, and this also stands true for those conducting therapy via the internet. If a clinician is offering online therapy, they should provide clear and precise information through their personal website and provide access to the consent form that should be signed and returned via encrypted methods. Also, the clinician's website should provide easy access to policies and information related to informed consent so that clients, either existing or potential, have the ability to click on at any point in time, gather this information at kind of their leisure, and then make a decision as to whether they would like to dive into distance therapy with a clinician. And clinicians should either require every new client to read and agree to the policies of the practice, or they should email every single client the same documentation. It's probably also very wise and ethically appropriate to review the clinician's policies with every new client verbally. So whatever platform is being used, they physically talk about those policies. Confidentiality is also another very big ethical concern as it relates to distance therapy. There's many different facets of confidentiality that one should be aware of. So breaches in confidentiality and privacy, they clearly occur differently in distance therapy than they would in more traditional face-to-face therapy settings where clients are required to complete paper documentation. So where a burglar could break into a therapist's filing cabinet to steal client information, a hacker could break into a therapist's online database to steal email transactions or online records. Or even a client could save an online therapy session onto a hard drive without a clinician's knowledge. So a useful rule of thumb when comparing digital and traditional forms of therapy is to estimate whether the risks to privacy and confidentiality are any greater in the digital environment than in the traditional environment. Clearly, there are risks in both. It's just important to weigh those and make sure that they've taken every step. So encryption, password protected files, those types of things to make sure that it's not accessible by other people, which would also include information technology staff. Another confidentiality issue that a social worker should take into account that does not occur in traditional therapy would be ensuring that no other person has access to the client's information that's online. So if a client uses a family computer, making sure that that client is aware that unless they have made a password protected file, that other people could potentially see some of the information that they're saving. It's important to make sure that the email addresses that the clinician is using to correspond with the client is correct. It's also important that the client maybe password protects that email so that nobody else is receiving it. And one suggestion for avoiding an email going to somebody else within a family computer would be to agree on a certain subject line that would discourage family members from reading the private communications if intercepted. So like a general subject line that doesn't seem very interesting would hopefully keep someone from opening something that they have no business opening. It is the social worker's responsibility to inform the client of confidentiality and privacy issues, so it really falls on the clinician to tell the client that they need to protect their privacy on their computers. Another ethical concern is appropriate licensure. So clinicians need to be licensed in the state or states in which they're practicing, and most state laws prohibit out-of-state clinicians from providing distance therapy to consumers. So it's really important that the social worker and the clinician are aware of the state licensure laws and they're abiding by those laws. It's likely that the clinician would need to be licensed in his or her own state as well as the state the client resides in. So if a clinician is trying to provide services to a client that lives out of state, they need to know what the other state's laws are as well. It would be a violation of the Code of Ethics to practice without appropriate licensure. So again, abiding by the Code of Ethics is incredibly important. Another ethical concern is cell phone use, which includes the use of text messaging, which Annie covered a little bit, that texting is a great way to be in contact, but it's also been identified as a potential ethical concern. So cell phones really allow communication with others virtually anywhere and anytime. So it's important that if a social worker is using a cell phone to speak to a client, they're aware of their surroundings and they're not speaking within earshot of any other person, which could breach that client's confidentiality. And they should also be aware of necessary measures that should be taken if it's decided that clients can text message the clinician. So text messages are considered clinical interactions, and those also need to be documented for legal purposes, and you cannot encrypt text messages. So it's really important to keep the confidentiality, the client aware of the confidentiality issues with text messaging. Boundary management is another ethical concern. Social networking sites such as Facebook make it easier for participating parties to enter unintentionally into dual relationships or to make unintended personal disclosures. And so it's really important that if a social worker has any personal social media platforms running, that they have every privacy setting at its highest so that they're not allowing their personal information to get out there. And, should a social worker become friends or connect with a client on a social networking site, the relationship could then become public, which also breaches confidentiality. So if you can run through a friends list and see that these two people are friends, that could raise questions. Ethically, it's really important to be aware of appropriate boundaries, and that includes being on social media. And really the last ethical concern that we raised in this paper is crisis management. Social workers need to determine which potential clients are appropriate for online therapy by assessing the client's ability to recognize and respect boundaries, the severity of the client's problems, the diagnostic information, and also whether the client is suicidal or homicidal. If a social worker is able to determine client appropriateness, the social worker has to consider how and to whom they'll report a client that plans to harm themselves or others, and be able to refer that client to emergency services within their zip code or geographical location. So the social worker really needs to have a good handle on where that client lives and what services are available and how they would refer them. So the social worker needs to make ethical considerations to ensure that the client would not be harmed by participating in distance therapy. So really, looking at the diagnostic information, seeing the severity of the client's problems, that really helps the social worker to determine if they think that this person is appropriate for engaging in distance therapy. So really, social workers need to be aware of both the benefits and pitfalls, and clearly there are a lot of benefits to distance therapy, but it's also very, very important that a social worker is aware of the ethical concerns, takes those into account, and then makes an informed decision as to whether or not they want to embark on distance therapy.
So in conclusion, it's ultimately the goal of any good social worker or therapist to certify that the client benefits from the interventions provided. Ensuring that the clinician understands the benefits as well as the potential harms in providing this type of treatment are essential to maintain the social worker's oath of do no harm, as stated in the NASW Code of Ethics. Eliminating risks for prospective ethical concerns is both the job of the therapist as well as the client. Remaining mindful of email and text communication, who has access to the files or emails exchanged between the client and therapist, as well as utilizing appropriate password protections and encryption devices on all forms of communication are critical in maintaining client confidentiality and fidelity in treatment. In a world that continues to grow technologically, distance therapy provides services which meet the needs of a growing population of adolescents and young adults.